3, 2, 1, and we're going live. Hello, everyone. This is Virtual Jug. Oh, I see we're still here having Elena here there in the preview. Anyway, my name is Oleg. I'm very welcome. Happy to welcome all of you here at Virtual Jug, the online Java user group. And before we start with the speaker in our very intriguing session today, I'm gonna just go quickly through some details about the organization, right? So Virtual Jug is the Java user group. And I'm Oleg, and in the day-to-day work, I work for Oracle Labs on the Graalvm project. So you can hit me up with any questions about that or Virtual Jug. Big thank you to Snyk, which is a company that creates developer tooling around project security and vulnerabilities for the sponsoring Virtual Jug. You're watching this, if you're watching this live, there is a Slack channel on the Virtual Jug Slack called #LiveSession, is where you can see and ask questions, and I will try to forward them to the speaker. Please share the group and the session, and if you have any feedback, please hit us up on Twitter at VirtualJug or @live if you want to ping me directly. If you're watching this on YouTube and the quality is not up to your expectations, you can use the cog icon somewhere in the UI, and you will be able to raise the quality and should go into HD zone definitely. So with all that, it is my pleasure to introduce today's session by no other than Angie Jones. You can find her on Twitter. She goes by @techgirl1908. And today's session is called No Hate on Java 8, but 9-14 reign supreme. I think that is -5. -5 reign supreme. With that organizational details out of the way, let me just stop sharing my screen and introduce Angie. Angie, I'm very happy to see you here. This is a very interesting session. The newer Java versions have been coming up, and I'm sure our viewers would like to know what you have to say about that.
Yes, hello. Hi, everybody. Okay, so first of all, it's 9-14, not 9-14. But I'm going to go through some of my favorite features beyond Java 8. So yes, I'm Angie Jones. I love Java. I teach free courses at Test Automation University, where I'm the director. Some of those courses include things like core Java programming. So if you know anyone who is interested in learning Java, send them over my way. The courses are free. I have Selenium, WebDriver with Java, visual testing with Java, and a couple of others as well. So I am a newly titled Java champion and a senior developer advocate at Applitools. All right, so let's jump right in. Now, while Java is still the leading programming language, it has gotten a bad rep over the years, yeah? So some of the biggest gripes I've heard are things like Java is too verbose. Fair, you know, we have to write a lot of code to do the most basic of things. And another one I've heard is that the language was not evolving fast enough. So the releases of Java 7, 8, and 9 were all 3 years apart, which is almost a lifetime in software development time, right? So fortunately, the powers that be have heard us loud and clear, and Java's gotten a much needed makeover. And now new versions of the language are being released every 6 months. And with so many features, it may be hard to keep up. So in this talk, I want to demonstrate some of the newer features of Java and how we can take advantage of them in our code. So I have an example today that we'll walk through, and this is what I'll use to demo all of the features that I'm going to discuss. We're going to look at some test code, some automation code for verifying this banking page. And the specific test we'll go over is just going to make sure that all of these accounts are listed on this page. All right. So here's our test code. Let me walk you through it. So here We're logging into the application and we get a handle to this accounts overview page. And this is where that table of accounts is located. Next, we get a list of the account numbers that are displayed on the page. And then we want to get the expected accounts. So this test data can change. So we're actually going to make a call to an API to get the expected accounts. And this returns a list of deserialized account objects. So we want to make a new list which will only contain the account numbers as strings as opposed to the entire account. We loop through the list of account objects, and then we add the account number from each account to our list of expected accounts. And then finally, we compare both lists to make sure every account for this customer is actually shown on the site. Now, this was written in Java 8. So I know some of you are probably wondering, why did she do it like this? This is Java 8. I want to go through this and see how we can modernize it using some of the latest features, okay? So let's start here with the declaration of the accounts overview page. As you can see here, we're following Java conventions. We're using good names for both our class and our object. However, many times as we see here, these two names end up being the same thing. So this is redundant, right? It makes for a lot of typing. So in version 10, Java introduced type inference for local variables. And what this means is that instead of explicitly declaring the object or variable's type, we can instead use this keyword var. And Java will infer what the type is based on what is being assigned to it. Now, this is my favorite. I started off with the best one. This is my favorite new feature in Java because in code, especially test code, UI test code, we always have these long class names for our page models, and now we no longer need to type them out. Now, before you get carried away and start using var everywhere, let me explain the rules and also give you a couple of tips. So this does not make Java a dynamically typed language like JavaScript or Python. The type is still there. It's just inferred from the right-hand side of the statement, which means you can only use var if you're actually initializing the variable. Otherwise, Java's not going to be able to infer what the type is, right? Also, it only works for local variables. So you can use this inside of methods, loops, decision structures, but you cannot use this for global variables, even if you are initializing them. While the local variable type inference can be used within the body of local constructs, it cannot be used in the headers of methods or constructors. This is because whoever's calling you, they need to know the data type, right, of the arguments that they have to send in. So those are the rules. Now let's get into some guidelines. So given this variable name and this method name, I have no idea what the inferred data type of X would be. Sure, Java knows because Java knows what get X returns. But me, as the reader of this code, I cannot easily tell what this is, right? I would have to go to the get X method or hover over it, look at its signature and stuff like that. So this makes it more difficult to work with this variable. Now, while you should always use good variable names, it's even more important if you're going to use var. Once you start using this, you're going to love it, but please don't overdo it. For example, using var here, this doesn't do you any favors, right? Int is 3 letters, var is 3 letters. Just use int, right? So I've updated our test methods to use var. So I'm using var here, and the inferred type is very clear to me as the reader because of the variable name that I chose here. But here I had to change the variable name from actual accounts to actual accounts IDs list. Now, actual accounts was a pretty good name, but when I use var, got a little bit blurry, right? So in changing it to this, now it's very clear to me that this is a list and it's holding the account IDs. For this one, I also changed the name from accounts to accounts list so that it's clear this is a list that's holding the account objects. Here, I changed the name to be more representative, and I also explicitly define the data type of the array list on the right-hand side. If I didn't use this diamond operator to indicate that this is a list of strings, then it would be inferred as a list of objects, which is okay in this case. But if I needed to do anything with this object from the from the string class itself, I wouldn't be able to do that if it inferred it as an object. So that's why I explicitly said this is going to be strings. And then here I'm using var inside of a for loop just to show you that it can be done here as well. Okay, so let's see what else we can modernize here. How about let's look inside of this get accounts method. So remember, this is the table, and we're getting all of those values from that first column labeled account. And here's the code to do so. Now, we see here, it finds all of the account sales, and these are web element objects. Then it creates a new list to hold just the text of the web elements. So this is a list of strings. To populate this list, we're going to loop through each of the elements from line 3, get their text, and then add them to our new list on line 6. And notice this method needs 2 lists and a loop. So, of course, there's a more modern approach to do this in Java by using a functional programming style. So this approach was actually added in Java 8, but I don't see it used much in test code, so I wanted to quickly highlight it. Now, this is much more streamlined. Here, we still call find elements to get the list of web elements, but we don't need to store them. Instead, we turn them into a stream from which we can do some cool functional programming. So this map function will take those web elements and map them into whatever is passed inside of here. So here we're saying get the text from these web elements, then store them into a list, which we return. Here's an alternative way to write that same map call. Notice in the top example, line 5 is using a little shortcut or syntactic sugar. In the bottom example, line 3 uses the fully spelled out approach with an arrow. Okay. All right, so we can do this same thing in our test method. So instead of using the 2 lists in a for loop, I use a stream and map what I need into a single list here. All right, so we're getting modernized. It's a good practice to break up these chain method calls where each method call is on a new line. So it's really tempting, I know, to do this one big powerful call all on one line because it's like, wow, look at that wicked one-liner, right? But it makes it harder to read your code and process what it's actually doing. So it's a good practice to break this up so that each call is on a new line and it's easier to debug this stuff as well. All right. Are there any questions so far? Oleg, are you there? I know he had to run for a moment.
Absolutely. I'm here. I'm trying to monitor the Slack channel. I don't think we have questions so far.
Okay.
I haven't seen them.
Cool. So I'm going to keep going. Let's look at what's new in strings. So Java 9 introduces a couple of new methods to stream, one being take while. So let's say I have this code which gets the list of accounts and then uses the take while method on this stream of accounts. Within this take while method, you pass in a condition, also known as a predicate. And this is saying to go through this list of accounts and accept all of the ones that have a type of checking until you get to one that does not have this type. So here are all of the accounts that are stored in accounts list. Notice there are 11 of them. And when we say take while type is checking, we end up with a list of 3 accounts. And as you can see, it's the first 3 accounts from the accounts list. But when it got to the 4th account, the type was saving, so the stream ended, right? Because it went until it did not have that condition anymore. Java 9 also introduced drop while, which does the opposite of take while. For this one, we're saying drop the accounts of type checking until you get to one that's not. So with 11 accounts here, we see the first 3 are checking, the 4th is savings, the 5th through 9th are checking, the 10th is savings, and the last one is checking. So how many accounts do you think will be collected here in the checking accounts list? Take a guess. If you said 8, then you are correct. So this method dropped the first 3 accounts because they matched the predicate, and then it stopped the stream once it did not match the predicate anymore. So all other accounts are collected and stored into the list. Now, all of those accounts couldn't, all 8 of them couldn't fit on the last slide. So here's the full list of drop while account type is checking. All right. So you might be thinking, why on earth would I want to use take while or drop while? And that's because the examples I showed you were a bit of a brain tease because the lists weren't sorted. So the results were indeterministic. However, if you sort the collection first, as we're doing here, it makes a lot more sense. And notice I'm using this comparator to specify which property I want the object sorted by. Given the sorted list, we see, oh, okay, it collects all of the checking accounts, and that actually makes more sense. Likewise for drop while. Cool. All right. So let's see what else we can modernize here. Let's go inside of this get customer ID method. So this method is holding our test data. And based on the name on the account, it's returning the account ID. So this is using switch statements. And notice we have to declare the variable. Then we specify each case we want to handle. And inside of the case, we assign the value to ID. And then we must follow that assignment by a break statement to prevent fall through into the next case, which would override the variable. So not only is this a lot of boilerplate code, it's also tricky. If you forget one of the break statements, then this is going to return the wrong ID. And this actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was coding in PHP, and I was using switch, and I forgot one of my break statements, and got the wrong result back. So I'm sure it's happened to you as well at some point. Fortunately, in Java 12, switch expressions were introduced. So now you can use switch to directly assign a value to a variable. So notice here, we're using switch on the right side of the statement to initialize this variable. And the case statement doesn't need a colon in switch expressions, but instead it uses an arrow. And this is saying if the name is John, then assign 12212 to the variable ID. Notice I don't need a break statement. There's no fall through with switch expressions. I can even simplify this a bit more by removing the assignment here and just returning the result of the switch expression. All right. Any questions, Oleg?
No, I don't see any.
Oh, this is a quiet group. Okay.
That's okay. No, wait. I see a question from Mario. Why using drop while, take while instead of a filter? Are there any benefits to that?
Yeah, so with the filter, you're going to have to go through all of them in order to get them out, whereas drop while, take while is a little bit faster because you stop the stream once you've met a certain criteria, right? So if you don't care about everything that's in there, and you want to stop the stream at a certain point, then the take while, drop while is a better option.
Right. Very good. Very good. And Sandra is asking, so it's actually a double question. So I will ask both and you can figure out in which order it makes sense for you to respond. So what if the account list there was, sorry about, that was not about the switch. It was a little bit earlier. What if the account list is not actually a list, right? So it's an unordered collection. So you use drop while or take while a few times in a row. Will the output be the same or will the output differ? And also, what will happen if it's a parallel stream and you're doing take while? If you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so if it's an unordered collection, it'll look goofy like the examples I showed before I sorted it. So it will be indeterministic, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. So you want to sort your collection first before using it so that you can have deterministic results. As far as the parallel streams, I haven't tried this with parallel streams, but someone wrote something about the performance of take while, drop while when using parallel streams. I can't remember who it was or what the title was. I'll try to search for that and maybe post it to the meetup group. All right. All right.
Very cool. And also one question from JT. So this functional approach, is the JVM, I assume in the newer versions, more optimized for this functional approach, or is it just the coolness of the program?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that. I'm going to say yes. I would guess so. I don't know for sure though, but I would guess so. And somebody's done some benchmarking and stuff like that. So there are some articles out there where people have looked at the performance of this all.
You know, I am very sure that the JVMs, newer JVMs, are faster and more optimized than older JVMs. It's a project that moves forward. So at this point, there are no more questions. Can we probably proceed?
Yeah, let's go on.
Thank you.
All right. So I got a little more on here. So now using the lambda style arrows is one way to assign the value. But you can also use another approach. So you can use the colon that we're used to, but you need to follow it with the word yield. A bit more verbose, so I prefer to use the arrow. But you can see, you can specify more than one case as well. So notice here, we're saying if the customer name is John or if the customer name is Demo, which is his last name, then the ID is 12212. So this makes up for the removal of fall through from switch expressions because you can indicate all cases delimited by a comma. Now that was my big question when I first heard about the switch expressions, because I understand fall through can bite me, but sometimes I need to use them and I wanted to still be able to do so. So you can kind of get that same effect. You can also do more than just assign values. For example, here we're using the lambda style arrow followed by a set of curly braces to indicate that we want to do more here than just the assignment. Now, inside of the body of this case, we add more statements like this one, but the last line of the case must yield a value to be returned, because remember, in switch expressions, this is all about assignment. So even if you're going to do a bunch of other computations, you still must assign something back to this variable. Okay. All right, let's talk about the rules. So you'll need to use the arrows or the colon yield. You can't mix up both like this. So line 3 here will give you a compilation error because it's a different kind of case than the others. You can also use yield with the arrows, but only in events like that last case where you're using the curly braces in addition to execute multiple statements within that case. All right. You can use any of the cases to throw an exception. So of course, in this case, the default case here, no value is being returned for ID. The entire flow would be interrupted by the exception. And this is not limited to the default case. So I could throw exceptions in multiple cases, or, however many I want. I could throw one from John as well as default, and then actually assign values for Mary and Tom. So that's really flexible as well. Now, this is not a replacement of the switch statement. It's an addition to the language, meaning you can still use switch statements. And in some cases, it may be the more favorable option. As a rule of thumb, use expressions when you're using the switch to assign a value. Use statements when you're not using switch to assign values, but only to invoke statements. Okay? All right, let's go back to our test. So how about we go to this get accounts method, which is an API call. So this method is making a get call to all of the accounts for the specified customer. It's then deserializing the response into an array of account objects. So let's look at the API response for this call. Notice here we have an array of these account objects, and each account has an ID, customer ID, type, and balance. So I have this Pojo class, has nothing but these fields as well as the getters and setters for them. For any of you who have created Pojos, which are plain old Java objects, meaning just some fields and some getters and setters, if you've done this, it's tedious, right? And many people have moved to using the Lombok external library, so they don't have to write all of this boilerplate code. But in Java 14, a new construct has been introduced called records. So this is a record. Meet records. Say hi, everyone, to records, right? Much shorter. It's much shorter. Notice here, instead of using the word class, we use the word record. Also, as opposed to opening this with a curly brace, we use parentheses to declare the fields. So you specify the fields and their data types and this comma delimited list. Then you close it with a closing paren and a set of curly braces. And that's it. You don't need to make any getters, setters. You don't need to override the inherited methods of equals and hash code or toString. All of this is just done for you, and it's done really nicely. However, if you just want to override anything or add any additional code, you can do so within the curly braces themselves. So those curly braces open up and you can have a blast there, okay? Records can be instantiated just like classes. Account is the name of our record. And we use the new keyword to call a constructor. We pass in the values. So nothing new there, just like you would instantiate a new class. However, the fields of a record are final. So there are no set methods that are generated for records. Of course, you can add a setter within the curly braces of the record, but I don't really see a good reason to do that since the fields are final and it can't be modified anyway. You do have the accessor methods. However, they don't start with the word get. Instead, the accessor method name is the same as the field name. So notice the account.balance here as opposed to account.getBalance. Records were released as a preview feature in the current version of Java, which is 14. That was released in March. What that means that it's a preview feature. It means that this is not yet permanent. It's not a permanent feature of the language. It's just available for us to play around with, offer some feedback. Based on this feedback, the implementation of this can change. So what this all means is don't use this in your production code just yet. But yeah, definitely take it for a spin and see if there's anything that's missing that you might need or any additional feedback you want to give. By it being a preview feature, that also means support from the external libraries might not be available just yet. For example, the Jackson library is used to deserialize that JSON response that I had into this record. However, the Jackson library doesn't officially support records yet, or it wasn't when I tried this. I haven't checked back yet. So as a hack, what you'll need to do is explicitly bind each of these fields to its respective JSON property. And when and if records becomes permanent, I'm sure the Jackson project, as well as other external libraries, will provide support so that the explicit binding isn't necessary. In fact, when I was writing this, I checked on the Jackson project, and they were well aware there were already issues for this. They are aware this is coming and working on it. Okay. All right. Any questions, Oleg? Are we good to go?
No, so far I don't think. Yeah. No.
All right.
I don't think there are any actionable questions. We can leave some software questions for
the end.
like. Oh no, Michael is asking, does record implement hashcode and equals as well, or do we have to do it ourselves?
No, they do. So it's already done for you. You don't have to override those. Isn't that nice? You can if you want to, like if you have a very specific implementation that you want to do, but otherwise it's already done.
Very good. I think we can move forward.
All righty, great. Okay, next I want to show you text blocks. So let's continue on with the API. What if instead of calling the API, we wanted to mock the data right there in this API util class? To represent this whole thing as a string would be very tedious, right? We've all been here. This is, right? We need to escape all of the fields because they were already in quotation marks. We need to add new line characters for each line break, and we need to add a plus sign for each line. Oh my God, it's just so ugly. It's ugly to read, it's ugly to write, right? Text blocks. So beautiful. Text blocks allow you to use 3 quotation marks to open and then 3 quotation marks to close a big block of text. Notice you don't need to escape anything. The individual quotation marks are still there on the fields. The line breaks are respected. Oh my God, it's beautiful. So text blocks were introduced in Java 13 as a preview feature. We got a second preview in this latest release of Java 14. So this, like, what did I show right before this? Records. So this, just like records, is not a permanent feature just yet, but it is slated to become permanent in the next release of Java, which is next month, September. So yay for text blocks. All right, so let's look at some rules and some guidelines around text blocks. You cannot include the entire text block on the same line. If you do this, you're going to get a compilation error. And if you're able to put it all on one line anyway, it's probably not big enough for a text block. Just use your regular quotes, right? A new line must be after the opening quotes, like in this second example here. So this is legal, but it's not the preferred way, right? That looks a little bit goofy, a little bit unbalanced. The preferred way is to have both the opening and the closing quotes aligned, and then have your big block of text in the middle. So I'm showing this on a slide. That's why I have such little text here, but I wouldn't put "hey y'all" in a text block, right? Technically I can, but again, don't overdo stuff. That would have been fine with just a regular quotation. All right. One more thing I want to show you in that API class. Let's say we didn't want the entire response, but we wanted to just return a hard-coded list of the expected account IDs. The old way of doing this would be just to use arrays.asList method. However, in Java 9, this of method was introduced for all entities in the collection framework. So lists and maps and sets and etc. So this one seems small, but I've actually been enjoying this feature a lot. And I think the reason for that is because it's just more natural now. Before, it took a little bit of a cognitive effort to recall, like, which class do I use to make a quick list? Is it array? Is it arrays plural? Like, what is it, right? But now I want a list, I call list.of. I want a map, I call map.of. Nice and straightforward. And speaking of maps, populating these required a separate method call for each item that you wanted to add to the collection. Now you can define a map all with one line of code. So the parameters are key followed by value. And you can see here we have 3 entities in this one line. So John 1, 2, 3, Alice 4, 5, 6, Sue 7, 8, 9. Now I'm showing you this on one line, but in real life I usually break those into separate lines just so I don't get confused about which key goes with which value. And one more thing to note about using the of method is that it creates collections which are immutable. So what this means is that the collection cannot be changed by adding, removing, sorting it later. So only use this of convenience method when your collection won't require any changes later on in the program. All right, so there you have it. These are a few of my favorite new features from recent versions of Java. I've been using them in different projects, and I find them quite useful even for test automation code. So what questions can I answer for you, or have I already answered them all? What do you all think?
Right. So Michael is asking, does the static constructor of a map have a parameter limit?
Say it again.
Like,
static constructor of a map have what?
Yeah. So I assume the map off, like that, is there a limit for how many parameters can we pass?
Oh. Oh, Michael is thinking like a tester. I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't read anywhere about a limit or anything, but I've also haven't tested it to the max or anything. I've only, added like a couple of dozen or so. So I'm not sure if there's a limit.
I'm absolutely sure that there's a natural limit of how many arguments can a method take, but I'm not sure if there is an artificial limit specifically for the map off. And the follow-up question, do you happen to know if this is, the implementation of the map off is the same as the immutable map of implementation is in the Apache library?
I don't. Anybody know that?
I don't know that from the top of my head as well.
No, I don't know.
That's I think, Michael, this is something that you have to just look in the code. That's yeah, not a question from the top of our heads. Dalia is asking, and hi Dalia.
Hey, Dalia.
Very nice to have you in chat here. Angie, have you been using modules in your projects at all? And I guess maybe a comment about that.
Yeah, I have not. Have you, Oleg?
No, I'm mostly on Java 8 still.
Oh, Oleg, come to the party.
I would absolutely love to, but so far the life didn't turn this way. Oh, Stuart Marks is there. Hey, Stuart. There is a limit of 10 key value pairs for map off, and this is an excellent chance, you people. Stuart Marks is in the chat, so
nice.
he can be
so 10.
Wow. 10 pairs. We also have the YouTube chat, which is not something where we very often check the questions, but we've been said that there are a few questions, so we are coming back to the records. Okay. Angie, so there are 2 questions there. So Marco is asking, are records thread safe?
Are records thread safe? Somebody else answered that. I don't know.
Right. We will have to check. And also, let me get this correct.
Let me write this down. I like to get questions, the ones I don't know, and then I can go play with them and write like a follow-up blog post. So records thread safe.
Right. And Vikram is asking, so can we extend records? Can we achieve inheritance using a record?
Let's see. That was one of the questions that I got before, and I actually looked that up. So let me give you the T on that. I went and played with it a little bit more. So fun. Okay, let's see. Is this it? Maybe. All right. Okay, here we go. Okay, can records inherit from other classes or records? So I wrote this on my blog. This is why you blog, people, because then you answer yourself, right? All right, so since records are final, I said it doesn't seem like this is possible. So given this class, and I wrote like a regular class, a parent class, we called it accounts mom. Attempting to have a record extend a class results in a compilation error. So the error was no extends clause allowed for record. If we change accounts mom from a class to a record, so we have record accounts mom, then attempt to have account extend accounts mom, we also get a compilation error. So that error is cannot inherit from final accounts mom. All right.
Very good. Very good. Chat, I see people thanking you for the session. Do we have any more questions? Let's keep it the last round of questions if anyone has any. You can also type in your favorite moments or your favorite features that Angie mentioned in the session.
Do you
that
have
would be absolutely welcome.
Any of them look exciting to you all?
And one of the most important things, right? You don't have to stop at this session. Angie is available online. You can find and follow her on Twitter. And I'm sure if you have questions that you haven't been able to ask here, or if you're watching this on YouTube as a recording, then you can ask questions there. And I'm sure the community and Angie will be happy to provide some insight.
Yep.
I don't see any more questions. I think this is it.
Okay.
And I think we can be saying goodbyes now. Thank you very much, Angie. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. It was excellent. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.